to another huge episode of Triggered. So much is happening, and it's not a great day to be Don Lemon. But it is a great day to be here with all of you guys. On one hand, you've got law enforcement finally being given the green light to actually do their jobs. The FBI just captured the 5th top 10 most wanted fugitive in a single year under my father's administration, more than the entire 4 years of Joe Biden and his incompetent boobs combined. On the other hand, you've got the radical left completely losing their minds, storming churches now. Now they're storming churches, guys. You know how that usually ends up? It's pretty scary stuff. With Don Lemon, of course, live streaming and participating in the whole thing like he's covering some sort of civil rights march, while Christians are simply trying to worship on a Sunday morning. Plus, later in the show, we'll be joined by Kentucky Senate candidate Nate Morris. So we've got a lot to get into today. Guys, make sure you are liking, make sure you are sharing, subscribing to Rumble, put on the notifications, everything. Hit the like button. Do it right now. It's so easy. Get it out there. Share this with your friends. Download the Rumble app on your smart TVs so you can watch with the whole family. I generally speaking behave myself, though not always, so you never miss one of these major episodes. Remember, if you do miss the show here on Rumble, go over to Apple, Spotify, and get the podcast there. If your friends get their podcast that way, send it to them. And for all of the top headlines we cover on the show, go over to my news app, MXM News, like minute by minute, where you can get the mainstream news without the mainstream bias. And of course, don't forget about our brave sponsors for having the guts to support this program. So guys, be sure to check out the Birch Gold Group to protect your savings for the future. Gold is up around 40% this year. And if a portion of your savings isn't diversified into gold, you're missing the boat. Birch Gold will help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold. You don't pay a dime out of your pocket. Just text Don Jr., like my initials, DONJR, to the number 989898 and claim your free info kit. There's no obligation. Just educate yourself with a lot of useful information. Again, text Don Jr. to the number 989898. And now let's get into all of the top headlines. Let's start with this absolutely enraging story out of Minnesota. Yesterday morning, Sunday morning, Christians are gathered at City Church in St. Paul, Minnesota, where they're there to worship. Families are there with their children. It's a Southern Baptist congregation. And what happens? Well, about 30 anti-ICE agitators from the Radical Justice Network and Black Lives Matter Minnesota storm into the church during the service and start chanting, "ICE out," and "hands up, don't shoot," because of course. Here was the scene from inside the church.
Renee, good! Where are you? Where are you? Where are your people? Why are you not at Whipple every day fighting for the humanity, standing for our people? Where are you? You drink your coffee, you got your jewelry, you have your nice clothes, but what do you do? What do you do to stand for your Somali and Latino communities? I'm not going to comment. You have no comment, exactly. Comfortable white people who are living lavish, comfortable lives while children are dragged into concentration camps. You're living real life, nice lives with your lattes, doing absolutely nothing for your Latino and Somali brothers and sisters. You come here to a man wearing a suit. Is a preacher? Did Jesus wear a suit? Did Jesus profit off the words? No. Jesus would dine with immigrants. Do not touch me. Touch me again and see what happens.
Hey, you can't.
You are a fake Christian. Why are you not standing with your Somali and Latino communities? Why do I not see you out at Whipple every day protesting this attack on humanity? Where are you? You're sinners. You're pretending to be Christians. But we know you live an easy life, don't you? A very easy life while people are starving. Shame. Out now. Out now. living real comfortable while the people starve, living real comfortable while children are dragged into concentration camps. You're all living real comfortable, aren't you? Shame on you. Do something. Stand with the Somalis. Stand with the Latinos. Quit ignoring this injustice. He wears a suit and tie, and he hangs out with Christy Nome. How is that a Christian? You're supposed to accept all immigrants, are you not? Why are you not going down to Whipple and joining us in protest against this inhumanity? You claim to be a Christian, act like one.
Think about what you just watched there. These people are disrupting a Christian worship service. Families are trying to pray. Children are terrified. And Don Lemon is narrating the whole thing like he's covering the march on Selma. And here's the best part, guys, or should I say probably, honestly, the worst part. Don Lemon actually defended these people. He actually stood there and said, quote, "This is what the First Amendment is about, the freedom to protest. I'm sure people here don't like it, but protests are not comfortable." The First Amendment doesn't give you the right, guys, to trespass and intimidate church during Sunday services, okay? Now, the lead pastor of the church, Jonathan Parnell, confronted these people. He's standing there trying to protect his congregation. And he tells them, "Shame on you, this is a house of God." And then Don Lemon walks up with full sanctimony to the pastor with his camera rolling and starts asking him questions. Watch this.
It's shameful. It's shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship. So,
but there were folks who will say,
I have to take care of my flock.
okay, but listen, we live in there's a constitution in the First Amendment to freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and protest.
We're here to worship. We're here to worship Jesus because that's the hope of these cities. That's the hope of the world is Jesus Christ.
I want to be very respectful. Please don't push me, though.
We're here to worship Jesus.
Yes.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why we're here.
Okay.
That's what we're about.
Don't you think Jesus would be understanding
we're about
and love these folks?
We're about spreading the love of Jesus.
But did you try to talk to them as a
no
Christian?
one is willing to talk.
Okay.
I have to take care of my church and my family, so I asked that you actually would also leave this building.
You don't want us to
Unless you're here
chronicle
to
what
worship.
happened?
Unless you're here to worship.
I'm always worship. I'm a Christian.
We're here to worship.
Yeah.
We're here to worship. Okay.
Thank you.
You heard the pastor. This is unacceptable. It is shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship. I have to take care of my flock. And then he asks Lemon to leave unless he's there to worship. Now, Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon, who heads the Civil Rights Division, she saw these videos, and she announced that the DOJ is investigating potential violations of the Federal FACE Act. Now, for those of you who don't know, the FACE Act, the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrance Act, protects houses of worship from exactly this kind of intimidation, from exactly these kind of tactics. And Dillon has a message for Don Lemon. You are on notice. Check this out.
Made a big mistake, whoever they are. We are investigating exactly who they are, who coordinated with them, who paid for it, and who was there. And this will be met with the full force of the United States Department of Justice, as the Attorney General has directed. And we discussed yesterday with the pastor, who was totally shaken. He was with his family. We want to make sure everyone felt safe. And there will be further legal action in coming days.
Now, compare that to how the Biden administration handled things. Remember when pro-life activists were being dragged out of their homes in pre-dawn raids by FBI agents with guns drawn? Remember when they prosecuted elderly grandmothers for praying outside of abortion clinics? But did they ever prosecute anyone for the attacks on pregnancy centers? Did they prosecute anyone for the fire bombings, the vandalism, the threats against pro-life organizations? Of course they didn't. Because under Biden, the DOJ was a weapon to be used against political opponents, not a tool to enforce law equally. Now, this church invasion didn't happen in a vacuum, guys. It's part of a much bigger picture of what's happening in Minnesota right now. And let me be clear about something. The reason there are thousands of ICE agents in Minnesota is because Minnesota has become the epicenter of one of the largest fraud scandals in American history. Federal prosecutors estimate that $9 billion has been stolen from programs meant to feed hungry children, provide services to autistic kids, house disabled seniors, and provide health care to vulnerable Americans. But instead of cooperating with federal investigators, instead of working to perhaps, recover stolen taxpayer money, what does Tim Walz do? What does Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey do? They obstruct. They tell their police not to cooperate with ICE. They tell residents to film federal agents. They whip up hysteria against the very people trying to enforce the law. They're trying to prevent the arrest of child sex offenders. Watch.
We're here to arrest a child sex offender. And you guys are out here honking.
No, we're pressed. We're not
That
honking.
vehicle right there is honking and impeding our investigations while we're trying to arrest a child sex offender. That's who you guys are protecting. Insane. That's what we're doing. My word's not for you. My word is not for you. I don't have to do it. It's insane how you can be honking.
The FBI now has a criminal investigation into both Tim Walz and Jacob Frey for conspiracy to obstruct federal law enforcement. And as I've said, we're just at the tip of the iceberg with this fraud. Check it out.
They have an agenda. Tim Walz is losing oil pressure rapidly. A large and growing number of Minnesotans would really like to see him in jail. And we will see articles of impeachment introduced in the Minnesota House when the legislature convenes on the 17th of next month. He is complicit in the theft of over $9 billion by many of the same people that have been attacking federal officers for the past 2 weeks. He will condition any sort of investigation that the state does in order to continue to try to fit the far left narrative, which is a small fraction of a minority of Minnesotans. Most of Minnesota, Jackie, is operating normal. The vast majority of it is. Tim Walz and Jacob Frey are continuing to put this forward and get it going to the point that their media operatives in Minnesota who help them support their narrative will keep that narrative.
And of course, Walz is crying about weaponization of the justice system. The guy who oversaw $9 billion in fraud, who's been obstructing federal law enforcement, who told people to gather evidence against ICE agents, he's the victim here? Of course he is, right? He's a Democrat. Do whatever you want. Do as I say, not as I do. Now, in the midst of all the chaos, amidst the left losing their minds and storming churches and obstructing federal agents, there's actually some really great news to report. Because while the radical left is busy defending criminals and obstructing justice, the FBI under this administration is actually doing its job. Kash Patel announced this weekend that the Bureau has captured five of the FBI's top 10 most wanted fugitives in just the first year of this second term. 5 of them. That's more than were captured during the entirety of the 4 years under Joe Biden. The latest capture? Alejandro Rosales Castillo. He was wanted for the murder of a 23-year-old woman in Charlotte, North Carolina. Think about that family. For almost 10 years, they've been waiting for justice. 10 years of not knowing if the man who killed their daughter would ever face accountability. And now, because we have an administration that actually supports law enforcement, he's in custody. This is what happens when you let law enforcement do their jobs. This is what happens when you have leadership that prioritize public safety over political correctness. This is what winning looks like, folks. Now, speaking of radical left lunacy, let's head back over to New York City for a moment, because Mayor Zohran Mamdani just keeps finding new ways to embarrass himself. First, there was Sia Weaver, his new tenant advocate, who called home ownership a weapon of white supremacy and tweeted, "Seize private property." She's also talked about how white families are going to have a different relationship to property going forward. I mean, think about that. But now, we have someone even more radical joining the Mamdani administration. Meet Afua Atemanasa, the new chief equity officer. Yeah, because you need one of those for the city of New York. And thanks to the New York Young Republicans Club, who did some digging before she could delete her social media, we now know exactly what kind of person Mayor Mamdani trusts to advance racial equity in America's largest city. In one post from 2021, Atena Mensah responded to a tweet about taxing wealthy people by writing, and I'm quoting here, "Tax them to the white meat." I don't even know what that means necessarily, but it doesn't sound great. Tax them to the white meat with a clapping emoji. Tax them to the white meat. That's the new chief equity officer of New York City. She frequently used the term comrade, we know where that goes, in her posts and amplified statements declaring there is no moderate way to black liberation. And what did Mayor Mamdani say when he appointed her? He said, and I quote, "There is no one I trust more to advance racial equity across our work in City Hall." And down in Virginia, we're seeing more left-wing madness, with the new far-left radicals in charge. And their first order of business under Abigail Spanberger? Ending cooperation with ICE, enshrining LGBTQ rights into the Constitution, in creating new congressional maps to combat Trump. Oh, and they also want property taxes. They want to tax personal property like lawnmowers and landscaping equipment and establish new higher tax brackets. So how exactly does this improve people's lives? What exactly is the point of this? Now, I do want to step back for a moment and connect all of this. On one side, you have an administration that is capturing murderers, child sex traffickers, gang leaders, an administration that is investigating billions of dollars of fraud, an administration that is protecting Christians from mobs invading their churches, an administration that is protecting actual civil rights for everyone. On the other side, you have Don Lemon live streaming attacks on houses of worship. You have Tim Walz telling people to film federal agents and bank evidence against them. You have radical activists going hotel to hotel, church to church, hunting for ICE agents. And you have New York City's new equity chief talking about taxing people to the white meat. And the media? The media is covering this like the protesters are the heroes and the federal agents are the villains. And right now, the Democratic Party has made its choice crystal clear. They're on the side of the fraudsters. They're on the side of the obstructionists. They're on the side of the mob storming churches. They're on the side of government officials who want to target Americans based on their skin color. Ironic, given what today is. It's why we can't get complacent. We can't get comfortable, and we need to keep building our roster of true America First fighters to keep this movement going full speed ahead. And we'll be joined by Kentucky Senate candidate Nate Morris in just one moment. But first, a special message from Amazon MGM on their new film Melania, in theaters on January 30th. Take a look.
Here we go again. Everyone wants to know. So here it is.
Melania, rated PG, exclusively in theaters January 30th.
And joining me now, Kentucky Senate candidate Nate Morris. Nate, great to have you back.
It's great to be with you, Don.
Well, so it was interesting. I heard some pretty big news over the weekend. You want to tell the audience about the news that you received?
Yeah, absolutely. Last week I had a terrific meeting with Elon Musk, and we had a great conversation about future of America and this Senate race here in Kentucky and why we need to get rid of the stench of Mitch, as your father would say here in Kentucky. He got excited about the race, and I think he was excited that I was a business guy and entrepreneur, and decided to make a big contribution to the super PAC that's going to be helping our campaign win this election here in May. So we're so delighted to have Elon's support and for him to go all in on us And I think it speaks volumes about the kind of campaign we're going to run, and most importantly, how we're going to stand with your father when we get in the U.S. Senate.
Well, God knows we need some fighters in the U.S. Senate, so that's pretty awesome. But, so beyond Elon, can you give us an update of your campaign? It seems like you've had a lot of momentum as of late.
Yeah, absolutely, Don. And I'm so grateful that we announced our candidacy officially right here on Triggered, and that was a great honor for the campaign. And since then, I think we've made tremendous strides in progress. We've traveled all over Kentucky. We've gotten donations from all over the Commonwealth and all over the United States of people that are sick of the McConnell machine, and they want change, and they want a fighter, and they want someone who's ready to stand with your father. And we've had terrific endorsements from Bernie Moreno to Jim Banks, Vivek Ramaswamy. And I'm so honored that we were Charlie Kirk's last endorsement before he was killed. And that's a responsibility that we have here on the campaign, and we don't take lightly. And we're fighting every day for Charlie's legacy and what he stood for, and why he stood up for our campaign and why he endorsed us.
Well, I know. I mean, I remember having those conversations before, he came out there and did that, with Charlie, and it just sort of felt like I did. I mean, the McConnell swamp, it's hard to believe that he could be in charge of Kentucky and a state like that with the demographics that they have there and still be so DC for so long. I mean, you really seem to be wanting to take a sledgehammer to the swamp. That's a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And Charlie knew the stakes. He knew that Mitch McConnell had stabbed your father in the back over and over again, thwarting his agenda every chance he got. And I think he saw the two candidates that were running and said, look, we're going to get more of the same if we don't get an outsider and a business guy and somebody that's willing to shake it up and be disruptive going to Washington and be able to stand with MAGA, America First, and most importantly, making sure we get your father's agenda through the U.S. Senate.
So, Nate, you just came out with a new ad. I want to play part of it and then get your reaction on the other side, but I think everyone should see it.
I was raised by a single mother, and we've been fighting and scrapping for everything we have, like most Kentuckians. I'm proud that I'm a ninth-generation Kentuckian. Only in America can you make money with trash.
And I think we got to get back to that and be the country of dreamers again. For conservatives, this is our opportunity to rip control that Mitch McConnell has had. This is our chance to get it back and give it back to the people.
We're ready, and I know that this is the fight, and this is what it takes to fight for the average Kentuckian and to finally give this seat back to the people, to have representation that's ready to fight for them in Washington.
Nate Morris, the next senator.
So, Nate, tell us about the reaction you got from the establishment after you launched your campaign, like you said, on this show, hammering Mitch McConnell.
Well, Don, as you know, Mitch has had a stranglehold on Kentucky for 40 years. And it is not the easiest thing to challenge the McConnell Mafia right here in the Bluegrass State, but we've done it. And we've gone straight for the jugular of Mitch and his cronies. And that's what has to happen to bring change here in Kentucky and to bring a new perspective. We know that Kentuckians are hungry for a 180. And the establishment, they have been kicking, screaming, fighting every chance they got. But we know, just like we saw with your father in 2016, this is what it takes to bring real change and to bring disruption to Washington and to usher in the America First agenda. And that's why we're standing so strong. That's why we're fighting so hard. And this campaign is about, it's a vote for Donald Trump or it's a vote for Mitch McConnell. It's your choice. And you can't stand with both. And we've got two people we're running against, as you know, Don, that would be puppets for Mitch McConnell. And that's why we're fighting so hard.
So how did it get that way? I mean, I look at Kentucky. I mean, definitely a top 3 or 4, overperforming state for Donald Trump. Probably all 3 times around. And yet Mitch McConnell can go into D.C. and basically try to do the opposite of anything as it relates to the MAGA agenda, try to block my father's policies from going through. How do you get that kind of stranglehold while simultaneously, going against the people of your state for so long?
Well, I think your father said it the best. I mean, Mitch was able to accumulate a lot of money and dole out a lot of money to a lot of candidates and a lot of people in Washington and solidify his base for many, many terms. And unfortunately, he forgot the people that put him there. He forgot what this should be about. And this is about speaking for the people and fighting for their needs and their desires and what they want in Washington, and forgetting the working Kentuckians, the people that are trying to bust it, trying to make it, the people like my family. Don, 19 of my family members worked in an auto plant. You know, I come out of a union household. I was raised by a single mom. These are the folks that are fighting every day to try to put food on the table and try to live the American dream. And he forgot these people. He left these people behind. And I think once and for all, I think Kentuckians, they're relieved that they've got a fighter, an America First MAGA candidate that's willing to put it all on the line and go to the mat for them every day in Washington, D.C. And that's what this campaign's been about.
So, Nate, what are some of the core policy issues that you're running on? You know, what do you ideally want to change there?
Don, I think the biggest crisis that we face for generations in our country have been the immigration debate. And your father hit it head on when he said, we're going to build a wall. That was the first thing that your father talked about in 2016. And thank goodness for your father, he sealed the border. But I have called for a full moratorium on any new immigration coming into our country until we deport every single illegal. Don, we can't have any carve-outs. We can't have any exceptions. If you're here illegally, you go back where you came from. Hard stop. And thank goodness that your father sealed the border. Now we have to enact the next step, which is to make sure every one of these illegals go back once and for all.
So I saw a clip of one of your competitors, in this Senate race in Kentucky, saying that we owed it to Afghan refugees to let them into the country. I mean, given what we've seen, given that we know the entirety of the lack of vetting of anyone, given that some of them have been linked to terror groups, et cetera, what's your stance on that issue?
Zero tolerance, Don. None of these Afghanis should have ever been in our country. Your father was very clear when we were having this debate as a country. Absolutely not. None of them should have ever gotten here. You know, my opponent, Andy Barr, he voted to let them in and said we owed it to them. We owed it to the people in Afghanistan to let them come into our country unvetted. And we saw this tragedy that happened over Thanksgiving. Our member of the National Guard who was killed by one of these refugees that we let in that should have never been in our country. And our friend J.D. Vance also said absolutely not. And MAGA was very clear about where we were on this issue. And Andy Barr did exactly the opposite. And I think it's these kind of distinctions that Kentuckians are going to see and people of the America First movement are going to say, enough is enough. Enough with the rhinos, enough with the people that are soft on immigration. We've got to have a hardline stance. Because, Don, as you know, and Charlie used to talk about this all the time, this is about our country, but this is also about Western civilization. Yeah. We have got to work to fight to keep Western civilization intact. And this is a hardline battle we got to take. Zero exceptions, no carve-outs. That's the way it's got to be.
Yeah, I mean, maybe just for the viewers, talk a little bit about, just, again, maybe your background, because I think what people are really concerned about is that, even in Kentucky, you can come in and, then you get to D.C. and you turn into, a swamp creature. Apparently, even Kentucky has a pretty deep swamp. How do you convince people that, you don't just get, sucked into the D.C. vacuum and all of a sudden, and I've seen it for, now 10 years as I've been doing this. People get on a stump, they talk to their constituents or what their would-be constituents. They tell them everything they want to hear, and then they go down to D.C. and do the exact opposite.
Yeah, it's a great question, Don. And what I would say is, first and foremost, I've never run for office before. I'm not a politician. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a business guy. I started my business with about $10,000 on a credit card, ended up building one of the largest waste management companies in the United States, grew it to $700 million in revenue and took it public on the New York Stock Exchange. I don't need the job. I don't need the money. I can't be bought. This is something that I felt a calling that I felt like I had to do, because if I didn't get in this race, we were going to get more of the same of what we've had the last 40 years. Don, I've said that I'm going to term limit myself. I think 2 terms is enough. Do the work and then come back and go back into the private sector, come back to my farm and take care of my family. Like your father, I was so inspired. This is someone who didn't need anything. He had this amazing life and he gave all that up because he knew that he had to fight for the country. And if he didn't do it, no one was going to step up. And I feel the same way about Kentucky and about our country today, that I had to do something. I had to get involved. And look, Don, I was in the toughest industry, I believe, in the world. This is the Tony Soprano industry. These are the toughest people in the world when you get in the garbage business. A lot of people don't know this, but Bill Gates is the biggest garbage man in the world. He owns more garbage stock than anybody. And when you're in the garbage business, you're competing against his money, his attorneys. And I learned how to fight, and I want to take that same fight that I took from business and apply it to Washington, D.C., and take out the trash once and for all in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I mean, you probably saw some of the intro. What are your thoughts on this situation with the Somali fraud in Minnesota, and then how it's very clearly being agitated and escalated by the left? What do you think needs to be done?
Don, it's an absolute and utter disgrace. And I think we're just beginning to see the tip of the iceberg with the fraud and with all the things that have been going wrong that have been swept under the rug by people like Tim Walz and that Mayor Fry. I mean, these guys should absolutely be thrown in jail for what they've allowed to happen. And Don, I think what we're going to find is so many of these migrant folks that are coming into our country, it's a scam. It's a scam all over the country. And we're going to see more and more of this. And I was talking to our friend James Comer. He said, look, this is the tip of the iceberg, Nate. You have no idea what's about to be unlocked when we start doing our investigations and oversight. And I think once and for all, this goes back to the immigration debate in our country. We got to get really tough. We shouldn't be letting people in our country that don't share our values and that people are not going to contribute to the country when they get here. And the Somalis are a great example of that. They should have never been in our country in the first place.
I imagine it goes much further than that, right? That's an example in Minnesota, but I don't think you believe it, because I know I don't. That this isn't happening in California with every sort of demographic. It's probably happening in Kentucky to some level or another. How do you handle the bigger situation, which is if there's $9 billion of fraud in Minnesota, it's probably hundreds of billions, if not trillions, over the last few decades, all over the rest of this country. Money that's being essentially stolen right out of the pockets of hardworking Americans that don't feel like they're getting the services that they're paying for with their taxpayer dollars.
Well, Don, we know we have a crisis in this country because we have Democrats that are trying to get illegals on our rolls and trying to bankroll these illegals every chance they get. And we know that this is all about power. They're trying to change the composite of our country so they can continue to win elections. Yeah. And that's the only way that they know they're going to get elected. Their policies are so terrible, they have to import their voters. Yeah. And I'm convinced that so much of this Somali situation, this was about power in Minnesota. And we see that, and this is one of the conversations that we had with Elon last week, is that, you have to kowtow to the Somali demographic to win a Democratic primary or to even get through a general election in Minnesota.
And then you have to pay them off.
That's right. That's right. And the Democrats have used this as a way to rig elections. And they're trying to do this not just in Minnesota, but all over the country. And that's why we've got to get so tough. All these folks need to be thrown off the rolls. They need to go back where they came from. And we got to stop letting in people that wish to do us harm and don't share our values.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. I was watching, I think just, on Twitter today, seeing Democrats complaining about how they want to make sure they keep non-American citizens, in the census. So people who are not American citizens get represented to how to spend your taxpayer dollars, then being funded, and given money to illegals, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there is no other explanation, right? A couple of years ago, this notion of, what I guess they called it the Great Replacement theory, like, it's not like a theory. It's like, of course they're doing it. They're saying it out loud. They're not even trying to hide the fact. They're just saying those quiet parts that you weren't allowed to say a few years ago. They're saying them loud and clear to everyone who will listen.
That's exactly right, Don. And this is a fight for our country. This is a fight for America. But most importantly, this is a fight for Western civilization. America is the last bastion of Western civilization that's left on Earth. I spent a lot of time, garbage took me all over the world. Spent a lot of time in the United Kingdom. You look over there, they've lost their country, Don, and they're not getting it back. And all that mess that started over there, the same thinking, that's coming here. That's the same kind of thinking that's going to take our country off a cliff if we don't get tough. And we look no further than to Europe. We're going to be like Europe if we don't get tough once and for all and get all these illegals out of our system, get them off of our rolls, and stop letting in people that wish to do us harm into our own country.
Yeah, I mean, I know one of the things I learned, certainly, growing up on construction sites and being in that business and real estate development, I imagine one of the things you've learned in the trash business is that the basics matter. The dirty jobs matter. What does that mean to you in the context of government? Is it time to, get back to the basics, capturing the bad guys and cleaning up waste? I mean, it seems so simple and yet so forgotten.
Yeah, absolutely, Don. And I think, I'm so proud that we're living in a time because of MAGA, because of America First, and because of your father's leadership. We're celebrating the American worker once again, the people that make stuff in this country. You know, I'm so proud when I see these big trucks rolling up and down the highway. I think about my family who helped build those. And we got to celebrate the people that make it happen in this country once again. But we got to give them the pathway where they see the dream. And thank goodness for things like the tariffs, that we're getting tough again, and making the rest of the world pay their fair share, because they've been ripping off the American worker. And I'm so glad that MAGA is pressing this and standing up for the people like my family that work hard for a living, and sweat and work with their hands, and make it happen every day. But these are the kind of people that have been left behind for so long. But we're finally getting back on track because of MAGA and your father, where we can celebrate these folks once again and show a path to the dream. We're working hard and doing things like building trucks, building cars, picking up waste, whatever it might be. This is the American dream, and this is what folks are hungry for, to get our country back in the way it used to be.
Yeah, no, it's got to be really hard. And just my hobbies sort of take me and, hang around with a lot of regular people. And, I would think they're pretty frustrated. They can work their asses off, work hard jobs, they pay taxes. And it turns out all you need to do is register as a daycare center with no attendees and get millions of dollars from the government committing fraud. And you could have almost the entire Democrat apparatus up in arms trying to defend the people that were defrauding the Americans actually paying their taxes. I mean, it's a wild situation that we're in. The media won't talk about it. They'll gloss over it, or they'll come up with technicalities. I mean, billions of dollars in one relatively small state, and it's like, oh, nothing happened. Like, of course, it's almost as though this is one big operation that allows Democrats to remain in power.
There's no question, and we know there's two groups of people, Don, that like illegals. It's the Democrats, because it's the only way they can win elections. And you may recall Stephen Miller said, if illegals didn't vote in our elections, we would likely pick up at least 20 congressional seats. I mean, think about that. These razor thin margins that we have right now in the House, they'd be gone if illegals didn't vote. And I think the other group, shamefully, that likes illegal immigration are the rhino Republicans that want cheap labor.
Yeah.
And this is all about trying to stretch their margins and get a better deal. And that's absolutely shameful, because it undercuts people here in Kentucky. It undercuts people like my family, the American worker, that are trying to live the dream, play by the rules, raise their family, and get access to what America is all about, which is getting upward mobility in this country.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, a key tenet of the Democrat Party platform is dependency. They need you to be dependent on Democrat handouts and whatever it may be. And it always shocked me. And I've done this for a long time now. So I go around the country and I do fundraisers for guys like yourself running for Senate, or even congressmen in small districts around America. And I'm like, man, you could be in an R+13 district, and you're like, how is the Democrat raising 5 times the money that they are? I mean, it definitely feels like so much of this, and why the Democrats are fighting so hard for it, is some sort of shell game. The money gets sent to Somalia, gets kicked up to some sort of NGO, gets back and donated to Democrat politicians, because it's like it's literally impossible. I mean, there's even as much as George Soros and them spend on these races, it's still almost impossible to not assume that there's other money that's being kicked back. And it's like, when you see billions going out, you're wondering, how does it come back in? And you see all the NGO stuff that was uncovered with the USAID and the Doge stuff, and you're like, oh my God, this is obviously what they're doing, and that's not okay.
No, absolutely not. It's an absolute disgrace. And the Democrats have allowed this sick culture to permeate for generations, and enough is enough. And it's time to get so tough. All these folks should be defunded. Anybody that touches this, anybody that's committed immigration fraud like Ilhan Omar, they should be sent back. And we got to get so tough, Don, because we're at a critical inflection point in our country's history. And if we don't get tough, we're going to lose our country, and we're going to lose Western civilization.
So Nate, I know you grew up in Louisville, which is basically, a Democrat-run, at this point, crime-infested city. What are your thoughts on sending the National Guard in, like my dad did, to clean up crime-ridden cities like Louisville? I mean, it seems like it makes a lot of sense. Totally, it was very unpopular in D.C. until people started being able to walk to the supermarket without getting shot, and then they were like, you know what? I don't know. It's not so bad after all. It doesn't seem that hard.
It's amazing how that works. When you get tough, you don't have crime. And your father saw this, took action where Democrats had failed for generations in Washington, D.C. So we're going to get tough. We're going to clean it up. And Don, I would welcome the National Guard to come to Louisville, because it's a war zone. And you go to downtown Louisville, it's so sad because we've had so many businesses that have gone out of business because people just don't trust going down there. They don't trust that they're going to be safe. And it impacts the economy, it impacts everyone's standard of living, and enough is enough. And that's why I've said, let's bring in the National Guard to Louisville. Let's get so tough. Let's kick out all the criminals and let's lock them up, the people that need to be locked up. And let's take back our city. And it's interesting to me. You look at all these cities, all the big cities around the country, they're all run by Democrats and they're cesspools of crime. And it's going to take bringing in the National Guard to finally rid these places of the crime that have been overrunning, these places where people want to live, they want to have a job, they want to raise their family, and they can't because they don't feel safe. And so thank goodness for your father coming in and getting tough in Washington, setting the standard. And I look forward to him going to Chicago and other places because God knows they need it. And we need the help all over the country and especially in Louisville.
So, to that point, you want to go to D.C. to be a senator, represent the people of Kentucky. So as far as the mechanics of the Senate go, on abolishing the filibuster to help the MAGA agenda get passed, what are your general thoughts?
Don, the filibuster's got to be nuked. It's got to be nuked once and for all. And we see all these rhino Republicans that look with all this decorum, like the Senate is some sort of gentleman's club or some sort of polite place. The Senate should be a body that works for the American people. And right now it's not working. We can't get your father's agenda through because we have all these senators that want to abide by this 100-year-old decorum that means nothing. And we know that the first chance the Democrats have when they take control, because it eventually will swing back. We know this. We see this throughout history. They're going to do all kinds of crazy things that permanently change the complexion of our country because they're going to get rid of the filibuster. They've told us they're going to do it. We should take their word for it because they're serious.
Yeah, that's the thing. When we talk about decorum, it's like if the Democrats had the opportunity, they would do it in 2 seconds to drive through whatever insane, transgender surgery for minors without parental consent thing is, the new hot ticket on the Democrat platform. So I tend to agree with you on that one.
And Don, we got to get while the getting's good. We've got the wind at our back. Your father has the mandate through his historic election. And we need to jam all this through the MAGA agenda as quickly as we can, because we may not have this opportunity in our lifetime. So we've got to move so quickly. And these folks who want to continue on with the filibuster, they are so naive and they are so weak. And they ought to be thrown out of office, these rhinos, all these rhinos that support this stuff. Your father's got a mandate. We need to back up your father. We need to make sure we get rid of this filibuster once and for all.
So, Nate, on a practical level, what is the difference between being a businessman and being a lifelong career politician? My father talks about it a lot. Most of the people in D.C., they wouldn't know because they've only been bureaucrats. What does it mean to you?
It means signing the front of a paycheck, not just the back. It means creating jobs. It means worrying how you're going to make payroll, having that knot in your stomach and feeling that feeling of what it's like to risk everything to try to build something. And Don, we got people in Washington that have never had a real job, that have just worked in government. What do you possibly know about what the American dream's all about and what people are trying to build throughout the country? We know that 90% of new jobs come from entrepreneurs that create things. And we have to foster that. And I truly believe that when people have a job, that solves a lot of problems. Yeah. And so we've got to have job creators that go to places like the United States Senate that understand it, so they can help foster the growth and the innovation that we need to keep our country on top, to keep these jobs coming in. And, guys like Mitch McConnell, who didn't have 2 nickels to rub together when he came to office, it's worth over $100 million, Don. I don't know how that happens.
No, it's magic, Nate. It's really, it's impressive. You grow nothing into a whole lot with a job that pays like $200,000 a year. He must be really good. It's sort of like Nancy Pelosi's a really good investor. But speaking of Mitch McConnell and money, you're running for Senate in Kentucky. You've obviously taken a very sharp stance against him and his policies. At the same time, in Kentucky and in the U.S. Senate, he controls a lot of the purse strings. I assume those guys aren't really reaching out to help fund your campaign, whether it's now or even later. So you're kind of doing this on your own.
Yeah, that's right, Don. I've had the good fortune. I picked up a lot of trash and made a lot of money. And, we're going to spend whatever we have to spend to make this thing successful and to win this race. But we need help from the outside, too. We need all the grassroots, people stepping up with small contributions all over the country to defeat the McConnell Mafia once and for all. And thank goodness we're so grateful to Elon for coming in with this outside group to help us as well, this $10 million. But, I'm in a position where I've been fortunate. I've lived the American dream, and I'm able to use those funds because I believe in this country, and I believe we've got to have fighters, and we got to have people that come from the outside. And I'm willing to stake aspects of my fortune to see this through for the country and to want to serve and to want to fight. And, I got two opponents, Don. They get all their money from PACs and all of McConnell's donors. I often laugh. I wish they would wear one of those NASCAR suits to show all the owners and all their sponsors who owns them. Because, the only people who own me are the people of Kentucky and the voters. That's who I'm working for, and that's why I'm going up to Washington to fight for them.
So, Nate, I know we mentioned it earlier. You were Charlie's last Senate endorsement ever. That's a big deal, and I know I spoke to him about it a lot even before he did that. Tell me what that means to you to be the last guy that he endorsed.
Well, Don, it's such a tremendous responsibility. I mean, Charlie was a once in a generation, if not once in 100-year talent. We may never see someone like Charlie in our lifetime ever again. And he paid the ultimate price for what he believed. And we think about that every day on this campaign, what that means. And to honor his legacy with the way we run this campaign, the way we fight for every inch, and why we must be victorious to honor his legacy. I had a chance to talk to Erica last week, and she just kept saying, Nate, we got to get you in there. You got to win. This is what Charlie wanted. This was his last political wish. And, Don, we're going to fight so hard to make sure we're victorious for Charlie and what he stood for, and to make sure his endorsement, that we are victorious for his last political endorsement. And, he launched our campaign right here in Kentucky, came to Kentucky. It was so important that he did this in person with us. And so that's something we're never going to forget.
So, Nate, where can people go to learn more?
Please come and see us online, natemorris.com. Make a contribution to this campaign. Come and be part, invest in what we're doing, and help us be part of this victorious movement that we're going to experience here in May. Follow me on X, @NateMorris. We need your help. We need your support. And Don, I'm so grateful for you having me back. And it's such a pleasure to always be with you. And thank you for all your encouragement and your well wishes. We appreciate it so much.
It's my pleasure, Nate. I'd get you in trouble. I'd ask who you're rooting for tonight in the national championship game, but probably closer. I would say you probably got to lean towards Indiana, a little bit closer to your borders. But we're just going to leave that one out there right now. I know I got all my kids coming over to watch, and so we're going to cook and have some fun. But Nate Morris, thank you very much, guys. If you're in Kentucky, if you want to help, America First candidates, go check out natemorris.com. Follow Nate on Twitter. He puts out some pretty fire content. So, Nate, thank you as always, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you so much, Don. Great to be with you.
Be well, man. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Great show. Great being with you guys. I hope you all enjoy the national championship game in like 45 minutes. Don't forget to like, to share, to subscribe, okay? Hit the like button, send it to your friends, download the Rumble app on your smart TV so you can watch this with the whole family and maybe, get your children a taste of real news. Also, don't forget to check out our great sponsors down below and in the video description, okay? They're the brave ones who have the guts to support this program despite all of the pressure the left is willing to exude. Remember that. That's a really big deal. Also, stay strong, stay informed, stay engaged, and, maybe stay a little bit triggered. Guys, thanks so much. We'll talk to you all again on Thursday.